Two folks that are going to be joining us today for this Navigating the Unknown series is Chalky, and Chalky runs an organization called CRED. They have an app that helps people do behavior change around the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we're also bringing in Darcy from Teaspoons of Change. Both of them, again, based in Australia. So it is currently 5 o'clock in the evening on my time here in Pennsylvania where I'm based. It's also snowing, which doesn't make any sense at this time of year, but it's just one of those years, I suppose. So we're going to bring them in from Australia. Hopefully they are awake and alert because it is probably early for them. So we will invite Darcy in here. He's with an organization, Teaspoons of Change. So we will get a chance to hear a little bit more from him on what he's got going on. So let me invite you in, Darcy.
There it is.
Sounds good. How are you, man?
Yeah, good, thanks. I was up with the dawn. It's beautiful out there.
Totally. Yeah, what time is it out your way?
It's now 6:30, so it's a respectable hour.
Wow, all right. Yeah, I am not a morning person, so kudos to jumping on the call with us at this time. I appreciate it a whole bunch.
No, it's brilliant. I am a morning person, so usually not always this early, but I'll be going for a 15-mile run after this, so it's always good to be up and about.
I haven't left my house today, so that's how I'm doing at the moment. maybe
that's good. Keep it safe.
After this. Cool. Well, thanks for joining in. I'm super excited to get to hear a little bit about what you got going on. And yeah, just get a bit of a different perspective. We've been talking to a lot of people in the US and especially in the American Southeast. So excited to just kind of hear a different perspective a little bit. Was wondering if you maybe could start off by sharing with folks here in the Sullivan Network who you are and what you do in the world. What keeps you busy, both prior and now after COVID?
Yeah, cool. So my name's Darcy, and I'm usually not in Australia. It's just COVID has me in Australia at the moment. I'm actually meant to be in China at this particular time in another world when we had plans and we're trying to keep them. But yeah, so I have a concept. I prefer to call it a concept rather than a business or an organization or whatever, called Teaspoons of Change. And Teaspoons of Change is pretty literal. It's our personal choices, decisions and actions that have a positive impact on people and the planet. So I've always looked at global citizenship for a long time and thought about, well, how can I, as one person in the world, try and make a positive impact? Now, I can't solve all the world's big problems like pandemics or climate change or whatever. I only have my little slice of life that I can contribute and try and do something with that. And so I thought, well, if that's the big picture of us trying to create big change, what does it look like for me as a humble, simple, single person in the world? And that's where Teaspoons of Change was born.
And what were you doing prior to all of this? I'm curious how you kind of like wound up into this work. A lot of people, at least in the Sullivan community, are always trying to navigate, right, creative career paths. So how did you get to the point where you're running this concept?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, good point. I didn't just wake up when I was 22 years old and get out and do it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing for most of my life, which is great, and that's the way I prefer it. But I graduated as a primary school Japanese teacher in 2000. Now, I've still never taught primary school Japanese. It was just, I speak fluent Japanese. I lived in Japan. But then I kind of had this choice between, should I do I listen to my head and do what I should do, or do I listen to my heart and do what I want to do? And I went through it was a tough process to go through that. And in the end, I went with my heart and went and started following the things that I wanted to do. So actually, one of the first things I did was to go over to the States and work in a ski resort in Colorado. I went from plus 40 degrees in the Australian outback to minus 40 degrees Celsius, all of those,
right.
In Colorado. So, and then that just set me off on that journey of going down the beaten path rather than the mainstream highway. And it's not always easy. I had to ignore a lot of family and friends who tell you what you should do. But I did manage to find things that I love to do, and that was travel, climb mountains, be in new places, meet new people, and then just see what the hell would happen.
Awesome. And how long have you been running Teaspoons of Change? I mean, yeah. How much of a significant
So
life does that fill?
yeah, cool. So prior to, I mean, up until this point, so I've sort of had two lives. One was a very normal, conventional life, growing up in South Australia, playing sport, blah, blah, blah. And then from that moment of graduating from university, that's been 20 years now. And I've been to more than 90 countries, worked a lot in aid and development, and learnt a lot from the, the lower income countries in the world. And then Teaspoons of Change kicked off in 2014 when I went for a 1,000-kilometre walk in Japan. I knew I had a concept brewing, and I knew I need a lot of time to think about it. So if you walk for 1,000 kilometres, I guarantee you have a long time to think about things.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, I'm curious on one end what your life looked like prior to all of this COVID stuff, leading this concept. And right, I'm always fascinated, like pick inside the brain of folks that lead alternative careers, right? Probably not the norm. And so what did it look like prior, and now how has it shifted dramatically? You said you're now kind of like stuck in Australia, not where you were meant to be. And so how have you been continuing the work, pivoting the work? What does that look like?
Yeah, I feel pretty lucky. I feel like I've kind of snuck under the carpet with this one. I mean, all of my work has been completely cancelled since March, so I've lost all my work for the next few months as far as I know. But I also know that I'll reinvent myself. I also know that I'll never go hungry. And I suppose my security net isn't in having a huge bank account, but my security net is knowing that I know how to live simply and easily. And it's not that I have to make lots of money, it's that I don't need lots of money. And this is pretty easy to say as a single, white male, hanging out in his own tiny house built by other people and friends as a volunteer project that we did a couple of years ago, and self-sufficient and off the grid. I don't pay rent. I don't have electricity costs. I don't have all of that. But so I have sculpted that life intentionally. Not always, 100% intentionally. It has just kind of bumbled along and found out. But yeah, so my work life has changed dramatically. I would be overseas. I would be going from country to country, talking and working with schools and businesses around global citizenship. So instead, I just do a lot of running and riding around here, soak up the nature of Australia, do the right thing by health regulations, and just get online and try and peel and see what's happening out there. And I'm busy every day. It's really cool. Once you decide that you feel you can do something, you'll start connecting with people and they'll connect you with other people. And I've always sort of thought the more you throw yourself at the world, the more it tends to catch you. Now, not exactly and not perfectly, but overall, if you make yourself vulnerable and you throw yourself into something will always happen.
I mean, just from these couple of minutes that we've been chatting, you strike me as someone that like when my mind's kind of made up on something, like I'm going to dive 110% in and see where it takes you. I'm curious how that translates to the messages that you spread and like through the work that you're doing. When so many people, I think, have a hard time like making these big pivotal behavioral shifts. And I've been fascinated. As an aside, my master's background is in behavior change for sustainability efforts. And so I've been really fascinated in this time that everybody's behavior has suddenly been abruptly changed, right? And usually in the behavior change, like creative sustainability space, like you're trying to get people to a point where they have to change their behavior. So now suddenly the entire world has been forced into that. So step one is done. So I'm just curious how you're processing that. Like what do you see as step two now that everybody's been kind of like changing their norms, they're forced to?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been relying on people's goodwill to make positive change for 20 years. And I'm not really saying a lot different from the last 20 years, but now it's actually more relevant for people. So talking about self-sufficiency, sustainability, global citizenship, has a new light to it because of exactly like you said. So what I find there is I've shaped, like I'm not saying much different from 20 years ago, but I have crafted my messages and the method in which I share them to a point where I want to be an entry point. I want to be a welcome mat for people to get involved in believing that their actions matter and that our actions are connected to impacts. Without a guilt trip, without a moral bashing, without telling people what to do. So again, this is why Teaspoons of Change tries to fill that space, so people feel like, well, how do I create change in my world? And now that change is happening, whether they like it or not, it's a really good way to context that and say, well, change doesn't mean bad. Change doesn't always mean hard. It just means different. And so to kind of hold people's hand on that journey and say that when these things are happening, humans are really adaptable. And I learned that from living in Ethiopia and Latin America and all these sorts of places. And, whatever I do is always a product of those experiences. And as we go through this experience, people talk about pivoting and my personal feeling is that we're absorbing this experience. And I think the big impacts won't happen until, a little further down the track, 6 months, 12 months, etc. from now. And so what I'm trying to do is capture some teaspoons of change that people are feeling and doing accidentally at this moment now. And so in 6 months or 12 months time, when we go back and the alarm clock goes off at 5:45 a.m. on a Monday morning and we're like, damn it, let's go back to a couple of those moments. What were you doing when you had more time? When life might have been different and tougher and whatever, but you would have been doing some things to look after yourself. And so how do we integrate those sorts of experiences we're having now into the future, which comes back and gets, very busy and work oriented and those sorts of things once again. So that's my general feeling at the moment. I don't think we're going to go for a massive all-out change when things start when we get around the corner of this. I've got lots of examples around that, but it is a shared lived experience that I think is something that we'll draw back on and try and make a difference with.
Totally, yeah. There's not this many, I can't think of that many opportunities where there's such a large shared experience, right? That everybody is suddenly going through together. For folks that are just jumping on the call here, we've got Darcy with us from an organization, Teaspoons of Change. If you've got questions for him, feel free to drop them down in the comments section. The piece that I'm curious about, though, based on what you were just talking about, what do you feel, since I feel like so many people kind of have their head down right now, right? They're just trying to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. Time is going by in a really slow and fast way all at the same time. And so for so many people, they can't even think about 6 months, 12 months down the road, right? Like they're just trying to survive, right? They're not even thinking about the thrive part. And so what do you think is something helpful that people can be doing now to be capturing the story, the milestones that are happening now, so that in 12 months from now, they can look back and say, oh, I can actually chart the change, or I can see how things were different, or my norms shifted in some way. What can people be doing now so that in 6 to 12 months from now, they have something really concretely to look back and point to?
Yeah, cool. And I think I've just been writing up a survey actually for people to try and think of what are 3 things that they're doing differently now than they were doing before COVID. And it doesn't have to be 3. It could be 1. It could be 5. But I think if we can kind of capture this moment, particularly right at the moment when we're doing things differently and it's still quite new, we're just starting to normalize it. I kind of feel like that we've reached our peak in kind of crises mode, and the dust is settling a little bit more. It's almost getting to the point where it could be boring, but I think if we can consolidate a couple of things that we're doing almost accidentally at the moment, then just take note of them. I don't think it's right, this is the pinnacle, this is amazing, but it would be something interesting to look back on in the week of the 18th of April. What did that week look like for me? And I would almost journal out, what your day looked like a couple of days in this week. So you look back and go, oh yeah, I did, get up with the birds and go for a walk and got online and had some chats and then fixed some stuff around the house and spent a bit more time making some meals. Or actually I had a really terrible afternoon because I was lonely and I didn't, and so even those moments of feeling down, again, it doesn't have to be an Instagram world. You don't have to highlight only the good things, but you might find the things which are tough, and that might just remind you in 12 months' time, I couldn't just go and see my mum and give her a hug, and I hate that I couldn't just go in there and eat all of her biscuits and give her a hug and and those sorts of things. So So I think just live this experience. But if we can drop little notes, and I reckon particularly at this moment in this couple of weeks, because we're starting to normalize a few of these things. They're still quite new though, and fresh in our minds. So I reckon a little bit of journaling, and I've got a survey that I will throw out and see what small changes people are taking, and then check that out when we get back to another world in the future.
Totally. Yeah, I was actually just on a call right before this with a good friend, and he uses the phrase "capture the butterfly." And so, right, oftentimes you just think it's right in insect mode, and then it all of a sudden goes to butterfly mode, and you don't think about all of the different stages up into that point, and you forget and you take for granted all of the work that it takes to get to that butterfly stage. And so, like, what can you do to capture the butterfly along the way? Which I've always found helpful, because I used to journal a ton, and then I just fell off, and I totally forgot that habit, and I'm slowly starting to bring it back, but baby steps right now. So
yeah, and I reckon we're in the chrysalis mode at the moment. We're in that alchemy of between caterpillars and butterflies.
Literally, we are all cocooned in our house right now. Like that, you have nowhere.
Exactly.
So, so I'm curious. You mentioned a couple times that you've had the chance to travel a ton, and I'm curious if that has brought an interesting perspective for you in terms of how different cultures are kind of handling this time. Whether it be, stories you're hearing in your network of people that you've bumped into along your travels. I mean, yeah, is there an interesting cultural or global lens that you're kind of seeing things through at the moment?
Yeah, I think what it most did for me was give me a humanitarian lens. What it made me realize is that I was born into a world where I had access to clean water, health, education, and the access and opportunity to travel. And so sort of a really important moment for me was in Kyrgyzstan in 2001, where I was climbing mountains, and I did some volunteering, and I was with some teachers, and their salary was $40 for 1 month. And so they meant they had to be incredibly resilient, resourceful, grow some of their own food, work together as a community. And so, it was kind of skin pinching stuff almost every day for about 2 years, as I got to wake up and meet lots of interesting people in different places. So my global citizenship hasn't come from traveling to more than 90 countries. I think, you don't have to be. I know people who have never left their hometown, but they can still think in that collective context. But what it did for me was make me realize that where I was born and what I brought up in was a lottery of life, and I won the lottery in terms of access and opportunity as a male, as being white in a culture in Australia where a Caucasian background dominates in society, and these sorts of things. So yeah, I think really what I learned from travel, and you can learn this from anywhere, is that once you realize that you're just one person of 7 point whatever billion people it is in the world, how do we try and work together so that we can all have access and opportunity, no matter what gender we are, what ethnicity, where it is, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the travel helped for me to gain that understanding of humanity, but I've also trained lots of people in presentation skills. I've heard hundreds of stories of why people kind of care. And it could be, looking at the moon and realizing that you share the same moon with 7 billion people. It could be you watched a TV show, you read an article from Oxfam. It could be all these little different things. We never know what just sort of starts to click in our mind and gets us on that course of realizing that we're just one of many people in the world.
Totally. Yeah, I've been thinking, and I'm sure that this is something that stews in your mind a while, is this idea of partnerships and collaborations. Oftentimes, right, so I wear multiple different hats. So sometimes my role is as like an outside consultant or, innovation force of some sort. I come in and step one is like shake the nest, right? Disrupt everything. And then shake two is help build new norms and new partnerships, new collaborations, because people suddenly are seeing things differently. And so I've been fascinated because this whole experience has radically shake the nest for everybody, right? So like step one of my typical process of like break the system and then rebuild the system, step one has sort of been done. And so now there's all these really interesting opportunities to build new partnerships and collaborations. And so have you seen anything that has really excited you, inspired you about, whoa, 3 months ago, I would have never thought about these folks partnering or collaborating in the way that they are. How are you thinking through partnerships at this point?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I reckon for a couple of years now, I've been banging on. My big phrase around this one is that I think competition is done. Like we've done competition to death. I think collaboration is the new competition. So I'm all in for collaboration. I almost said competition then. I'm all in for collaboration. I just think it's more powerful. I just think it's a net benefit for everyone. So and if I don't say it, then Chalky will. He'll steal my line because he loves it as well. Is that what I believe in is collaboration for mutual benefit. Now I've been saying that since 2009 when I worked for an organisation called the Global Poverty Project, which is now called Global Citizen. They run huge concerts. There's a massive concert happening this weekend online. And so we always talked around collaboration for mutual benefit. So the other thing for me is collaboration for mutual benefit and maximum impact. Okay, now as a global citizen educator, I can go and do stuff and go to, I've given 1,300 presentations and workshops to over 120,000 people, and that's cool as one person. But when I combine up with a whole bunch of others, then it's limitless. So at the moment, we've just consolidated. I've been putting together a collective of global citizenship educators and people who work in schools around global citizenship. And there were about 10 organisations. And so we've just launched that little collective. We should be seen as traditional competitors, but we absolutely don't. We believe in Global Goal 17, which is partnerships for the goals. And we're going to throw ourselves and offer a buffet of all these people working in global citizenship. And so you can get a bit of teaspoons of change. You can get some Arenda learning. You get Jump Foundation. You get all these, like this plethora of fantastic people doing good things. And then schools get a great choice of things. And then the saturation of working together just shows that we're going to be more powerful with the sum of our parts than individually.
Totally. I love that. I didn't know that you were involved in Global Citizen and all the concert stuff that they got going on. I just got an email. Simon Moss. I don't know if you know Simon.
Simon Moss.
Yeah.
Great mate of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I bumped into him in Turkey or something many, many years ago. I don't even know how we met, to be honest. But I just saw that they're doing what you might know more than I do. They've got some interesting concert or some virtual series going on here soon in a couple days.
Yeah, so we've got the virtual series that's been happening, but this weekend is a huge online concert. The Rolling Stones just ticked the box for it, so they're going to be joining in as well. I think there's something like 100 artists who are going to be making contributions, and so we do an amazing job with the Global Citizen Festival. So I helped kick that off in 2012 as well with the team. We started off in Melbourne in 2009, not knowing what the hell we were doing. They mostly still don't know what they're doing, but they're always doing something, and it's great. So keep an eye out for that. If you just look up Global Citizen, you'll see it all, and I almost guarantee that anyone who likes music, one of their bands or one of their heroes will be on that list this weekend.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always find it fascinating, and I think this is something that gets brushed over, is folks that lead these initiatives and these big movements and all of that kind of stuff. Folks think that they have their act together and they know what they're doing. It's like half the time you're just like figuring it out as you go. Like you're building the plane as it's flying. So anyway, I always appreciate and love drawing attention to when people mention that in a story. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, well, is there anything, I know we've got Chalky on the line too, I want to bring on and give him some time. Is there anything that you want to share that you've got going on in the Teaspoons of Change universe that we could maybe share with our Sullivan community? What is something that we can do to kind of support the efforts that you have going on?
Yeah, cool. So I've signed in under my personal Instagram, which is what I didn't mean to do. I meant to use Teaspoons of Change, but I've somehow forgotten the password. So if you do want to follow on Instagram, I'm really lazy on Instagram, so probably don't follow me there. But the thing for me is Teaspoons of Change really is a concept. And if people feel like that they can utilize it for any good in whatever circles that they're running in, if they feel that they can make a closer connection to those global goals by looking at their personal actions, then use teaspoons of change in your vocabulary. Get it to get people to feel motivated around what they can do, as opposed to, we've got all these big things and I'm only, I'm too small to do anything. And hopefully people can then grab this concept, utilize it for good, and we'll all, I live by the formula: small actions multiplied by lots of people creates big change. And so follow along. I'm a bit more active on Facebook more than anything, or check out the website. Happy to have a chat with people, running a few online sessions here and there. And if you want to learn about how to live in a self-sufficient tiny house, that's where I'm calling from this morning. So there's lots there. There's Happy Simply, Teaspoons of Peace. I did a master's in peace studies. So you'll find a fair bit of stuff there under Teaspoons of Change if people want to dig a little deeper.
Sweet. And the website for Teaspoons of Change is?
teaspoonsofchange.org.
.org. Cool. I never know if it's a .org or a .com these days, so .org. So, well, thanks for making time, especially super early in the morning. I hope your 15-mile run or whatever you have scheduled ahead of you goes well. So.
No, cool. Thanks for having us. And we're keen to connect and learn more of the Sullivan Foundation and all your followers to have a chat and connect with what they're up to as well.
Definitely. So I always tell people, it's like, now more than ever, folks have permission to reach out to whoever they want, right? Everybody's just kind of sitting at home with not much to do. It's like, if there's ever a lower that barrier of being able to just reach out to someone and say, hey, can we chat? Now's the time to do that. So I'm lowering that barrier for folks if they want to reach out to you, and I'm sure they can find you online. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
Nice one. Cheers.
Well, thanks for joining. Appreciate chatting with you.
No worries. Ciao.
All right. So he is up and alert way earlier in the morning than I would ever be. So kudos to that. Next, I want to bring on friend Chalky with an organization called CRED. So let me see if I can find him in the call here. Let's see if this connects with him. Hey, there we go.
Sorry,
man.
This is what I don't let old people on Instagram.
Hey, you can blame everything on a Friday, or I don't even know what day it is out there. Saturday for you guys?
We're Saturday morning. I've got a half hour ahead of Darcy, so it's 7:30 here in Sydney.
Nice. Yeah, you can blame anything on a weekend. That's why we do these calls on a Friday evening. Our time is, if anything goes wrong, it just blame it on the technology and the weekend. So cool. Well, we got connected. That's really all that matters. So thanks for jumping up early in the morning to chat with us. So
thank you, Spud. Lovely to be with you and everybody else on the Sullivan Navigate series this morning.
Totally. And so I've given folks a little snippet in the beginning of what you're up to and what's going on with CRED, but wondering if you could kind of kick us off with, who you are, where you're calling in, and what you do in the world. How do you spend your time in kind of a creative, purpose, mission-driven way?
Okay, so my name is Chalky. My real name is Ronan Domhnaill. I'm originally from Dublin, Ireland, but I've been living in Sydney, Australia for about 20 years. And so my personal purpose in life is to create meaningful impact. And my background is in technology, but I retrained in the area of neuroscience and neuroleadership about 8 years ago, specifically what we know about the brain, how we apply that to leadership, to change, and creating sustained behavior change. And my route to where I am now is probably a bit different to Darcy's, in that I had a moment in the early 2000s where life was good, and I was on a different path, and we were pretty cashed up, and I ticked all the boxes in life. I wanted to do my private pilot's license, and I got that. And I wanted to do a triathlon Ironman, and I did that. And got married and had a 7-month honeymoon in South America, and that was awesome. And came back to Australia and started a company just as the global financial crisis hit. So I went from, I guess, hero to zero real quick. And so a friend of mine saw I was in a bit of a rush, and offered and said, would some coaching be useful? I was like, no, mate, I'm fine. My life is good. I don't need coaching. I'm bulletproof. And then one day I realized I kind of need a little bit of help here. So the famous beach here in Bondi, in Australia, called Bondi Beach, and we sat down one Saturday afternoon and looked out at the ocean. He helped me set a few goals, and one of those things was to work out what I wanted to do in my life. And one of those things was I wanted to become a coach, but also I got a sense of what was really important in life. And I went back to some basics, and I was like, okay, we get one time on this earth. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is real. So what do I want to do? What's the difference I want to make? What do I want to be known for? And there's I don't know if you're familiar with a team called the All Blacks. They are a New Zealand rugby team, and they have the most I guess successful rugby team in the world. And they have a concept of you need to leave the jersey in a better place where you finish playing. So that was the kind of the start of my my personal journey. And I've always enjoyed working with people. In 2015, I set up Cred, and our purpose is to enable collective actions today to impact tomorrow's world. So we have a vision of 3 billion actions by 2030 to support the United Nations global goals, while helping people to see their personal impact.
Awesome. So I am fascinated because this came up in a previous conversation we had on one of these series. Someone asked, is this the right time in the middle of a crisis when folks are trying to support each other to like start a nonprofit or a company of some sort? So you tried to cut where maybe you did. I didn't hear where it ended, but in a previous recession, right? You tried to get something up and running, and now we're in another one with lots of uncertainty going on. So how do you navigate that? What did you learn from the previous experience that maybe you're bringing into how you're running Cred and navigating things at this point?
So I learned back then that you probably don't need that much, really, and it's all about mindset for me. Okay, so having a view of, and I think Darcy shares this view, and that's probably why we've connected in terms of values, that you don't really need much in kind of life to get by. And what does success mean for you? So I interviewed Darcy on a podcast a couple of months ago, and we talked about zigging when everyone else zags, or going left when everyone else goes right. And Darcy's got a lovely concept of taking out your machete and creating your own unbeaten path in life. So I think that's the kind of the hardest part. If you look at traditional success, it's taken me probably 12 years to recover, and I'm not back to where we were. But my metrics of success are very different, and I think that's been the hardest part about how do you kind of stand out from the crowd and create your own path. So I believe there's no secret sauce, but hard work. You get up every morning. Darcy said, the alarm clock goes off at 5:45. You get up, you do the work. Small actions has a compounding impact for your business. So what I'm learning at the moment, and I'm jumping on a whole bunch of webinars around what's happening at a macro level. So we are in a recession. It's, from what I've been told, it's an L-shaped recession. It's down. We're going to have 18 months of flat, and then 10 years of growth. And at the first 3 months, it's the emotional toll is taking on people. But what I also have learned is that more market share changes hands at the bottom of a recession than at the top of a recession. Okay. So, to your point around what am I also saying, I'm seeing the best and the worst of people at the moment. The best is that you have access to people that you never would have a couple of months ago. And people are willing to partner up and have great conversations. So I think it's really around putting yourself out there and having a go, backing yourself. And as Darcy says, God, I feel like I'm just quoting Darcy this whole conversation.
So you should have gone first, right?
You know what? I'm just stealing his lines. The world has the world has a way of catching you. It absolutely does. And you know, I was on one of your first webinars, and I asked Tony and Jasmine a question around, you know, imposter syndrome. And you know, you get a bit older like me, and it's harder. The fear that you didn't have when you're younger, you have when you're a bit older. But you put yourself out there, you pick up the phone, and people will say yes. Look, what can I do to support you? What do you need? So I think it probably seems counterintuitive, but there's probably never been a better time to put it. And I think in terms of where we work in the social entrepreneurship space, the world has hit a reset button. Okay, so at a macro level, I'm seeing people going back to what's really important in life: your health, your family. Do you have enough food for yourself and your family? Do you have shelter? Your community, and a planet. And outside of that, everything else is just noise, as far as I'm concerned.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like you hang out in the behavior space, right? And you mentioned neuroscience and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm curious, you use the phrase reset button. So for folks in this time, what do you think has been the most important thing that it has reset for them that will allow some new creative collaborations and projects and ideas to evolve from this point forward? But like, if we do a quick, like, you know, retrospective look, what within that reset button was really important to reset? Like, you know, yeah, if we take a quick snapshot of the last month, it's like, oh, society, you needed to hit reset on X, Y, or Z. I mean, for you and your work with cred and stuff, I mean, yeah, what do you feel has been really important in terms of hitting the reset?
So I think people are more conscious of just a life of simplicity. Okay, I think that's the first thing. People are saying, I'm spending more time with my family. You know, if you do have a family, I'm cooking more meals. I've got more time in terms of my commute. I've got more time to exercise. I'm having real conversations with people. You know, I'm picking up the phone and having conversations. So I guess on a behavior level, I often think, I look down in Australia. If I think about Australia, is a vast country, probably geographically the same size as the US, but 90% of the population live on 10% of the land. Okay, so we live in these kind of condensed areas, and real estate is really expensive. So I often think, if you look down, and think it's really crazy that we live in this kind of small parcels of the country, and then if you look down again and went, and every morning everyone goes into this, commutes into this tiny area of the city where real estate is really expensive, and comes back out again at 5 or 6 p.m. How crazy is that? So I think the whole notion of, you know, working from home, I know that's kind of done to death at the moment, but I think people have more awareness about how they're using their time and what's really important to them in their life. So I think that if I look at the phases, last month felt like there's a bit of novelty. I've got more time, I can exercise out more, I can drink a bit more wine, I can cook some meals. And then we had a kind of Easter break, and I think people are a bit stuck, I would suggest. Whereas last month was kind of shock. I think stuck is probably a theme. I'll tell you more about what we're doing at the moment. So how we're responding is, you know, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I think it was the 17th of March, and I thought, I've got to do something. I've got this experience, I've got the tools, I've got a technology platform, I've got a network of people. I feel like I've got to do something. So I just started ringing people that morning going, what can we do to support people who are struggling at the moment? So I reached out to a whole bunch of coaches. I reached out to people like Darcy, and I thought, what are people needing at the moment? And so I get a sense that people are needing like an emotional support. So I on a page, I wrote down, we want to do like a 15-minute daily webinar, start a day, end a day, help people do a brief mindfulness exercise, manage their emotions, like check in on how they're feeling. We've got 3 focus areas to give people some structure during the day: focus, move, and connect. So making people sure that they're choosing their focus for the day, physically active, and are socially connected. And everybody just went, I'm in. What can I do to help? So I think people are needing that at the moment. Then with the reset that's coming, I think people are going to want to hang around because they want something different. Okay. And this is where Darcy and I are starting to do some working with the Sullivan Foundation, the work around the global goals. I think people are saying, I don't want to go back to the way things was. I'm not going to tolerate climate action. I'm not going to tolerate some things that are really dear and important to me in my new value system. And I want to take small actions to change, because I think it's incumbent on people. So I don't think people are there yet, but I think the need is emotional support at the moment to navigate this time.
Totally. I think you had a chance to meet one of our friends at Sullivan, Chad Littlefield, who helps with Ignite. One of his phrases that I love is, right, we go through the world getting sips of connection, when really what people are craving is a gulp of connection. And the fact that we have taken that connection away from everybody, I think folks are suddenly realizing is like, oh my gosh, I'm craving a big gulp of connection. And now it's, can we give people the tools and the ability and the permission to go do that? But I think people have woken up to the fact that I'm craving that. And I don't know if I necessarily knew I was craving that a month or so before. And I was chatting with a friend the other day, how interesting it would be. This was a forced pause button that came across the whole world. But what would it look like, right, if every year, every 2 years, we just hit the pause button, right? Like we actually adopted the positives of this whole crisis, not the negative side of it, but and say, yeah, we're just going to hit the pause button for the month of March every year, right? That's our pause button month. What would that do? How would that change things? Like, could we have really that creative imagination to think in a really different way? And then how do we actually extrapolate little pieces of that into the organizations that we run and the companies that we run? So, yeah, I'm curious with Cred and all these people that you reached out to, like, what is some of the creative imagination that is starting to, pop up for you? What gets you excited when you're like, ooh, didn't think of this a month ago? What's popping up for you?
So when a conversation like when I reached out to Darcy and said, okay, I think people are needing the emotional support, but I want to start planning for people that they'll come for the need and they'll stay because they want to be part of something different. Let's start having a whole bunch of conversations around 30-day challenges, which we've been having months ago. And then Darcy and I were having those conversations. And then I had a moment, a kind of bit of an aha moment. And I thought, I'm a parent of 3 young children. And my whole school community have got kids sitting at home and parents struggling to keep them engaged, educated, and entertained, and even engaged with their own kids. So I said, hey, Darcy, would you be up for doing a webinar with our school community? And Darcy, being the man he is, goes, sure, I'll do it. And that was 3 Fridays ago. We've run 4 live webinars every Friday to a bunch of kids in the community. So Darcy has been educating kids around the global goals, what it means to be a global citizen, and how teaspoons of change can create big change in the world. And the kids get to do exercises. Darcy's got some great resources, and the kids, the parents love it because the kids are learning something meaningful. So I would have never seen that a month ago, Spud. And then I've got a whole bunch of people like Darcy who are all willing to line up and provide their time and really, gift their time gift their time for pro-social good.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because even this Navigating the Unknown series that we're doing right now, a month ago, if you would have, said, hey, Sullivan, you should start doing that, I was like, oh, well, okay, doing 2 calls a week, right? We're going to have to figure out how to line everything up, right? We would have come up with excuses, right? And that was not a negative mindset. It was just, that was kind of the mindset that we were in, right? Of like, okay, think about all the reasons why this is going to be difficult to do. And now we're sitting here and we're looking back and it's like, oh, we've done a whole month of these and it's just fun. We get to chat with our friends, right? And post them online. So anyway, it's that, yeah, what we thought was difficult maybe is no longer as difficult as what we once thought. And will we be able to keep that mindset after all of this when we go back to some form of normal?
It's interesting you say that. So as a founder, I've spent probably 4 years in my head, okay, trying to map out what cred is, and you know, now I'm just executing. Like I'm in. So what I'm seeing on a personal level is that a month ago, when my head was in the news and I was tracking exponential charts, so like what was happening in terms of COVID-19, all I'm seeing is the good in the world now. I'm part of some unbelievable conversations. Like people are saying, how can we connect you with the UN? How can we? So you mentioned this a few minutes ago. The doors are open now, like you would not believe.
That's such an important point, I think, because in the social entrepreneurship space, and as people are trying to think about how to navigate that potential path for themselves, it's so stuck in your head, right? And the most valuable thing is just like, you saw a need, right? There are kids at home, parents need something to engage them. Hey, I can step in and do something, right? And I feel like we so quickly get hung up on, well, how does that tie back to our business plan or our strategic goals? And sure, those are conversations to have at some point, but sometimes you just got to jump in and just fill a need, right? And then the business plan and the strategy almost builds around those small prototypes that you do. So I love that part that you shared.
It's interesting to say that. I'm going to share with your community. I'm part of this series called Business of Brand. I would highly recommend your community jumping on it. It's a twice a week live webinar, and it supports any type of organization to navigate this time as well. And one of the so they're the guys who shared about what's happening at a macroeconomic level. But a couple of insights they're sharing with us, Spud, are the products or services that you brought into this recession will be very different to what you bring out of a recession. Okay, so speed and agility are really important. They're saying at the moment, really understand your customers' needs, connect with them on an emotional level. Do not talk about you, your products or services, because it'll switch people off.
Yeah.
And also, the community that you thought you had coming into this may be very different to what you have coming out of it. So as you said there, you would never have imagined like having a webinar series a month ago, but now you look back and you've got a month of it done and you never know what's going to come from this. So to Darcy's point, taking a punt, taking a risk, and the universe will catch you. So I think that's be curious during this time is my advice.
Yeah, I find it so interesting because so often when I give folks advice, I'm right, like go out and understand your problem and your customers. It's like get out of your room, get away from your computer, go and talk to people in the physical space, right, and understand the needs. And that part is now no longer there, but the curiosity to be able to pursue that still exists. You just have to do it in a slightly different way. So yeah, I think having that curiosity is so critical.
100%. Yeah. And you know, I think the final thing I would say is around the partnerships. And again, I'm going to quote Darcy. It's not around having formal memorandums of understanding, you know, signing contracts. It's like, how do we just partner for mutual benefit and to maximize impact, right? So every conversation I've had in the last month, you can quickly tell the people who are going to be able to work with you and the people who you're not going to be able to work with. And I just kind of push the others to the side and like, cool, okay, let's just keep working together.
Right, because there is no time to hash out legal memorandums and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like that is not the priority. Let's just go, which has been reassuring for me because that's typically how I do my business anyway. It's like, yeah, just forget about all the fine print. We're just going to shred those papers. I know that is not maybe the best advice for certain businesses, but in my world, that's kind of how I operate. It's just, you know, I'm working off trust with the people that I collaborate with.
100%, but yeah. And I think just to kind of tie that up, I think the group, if you're working in like the social entrepreneurship space, you know, it probably wasn't the cool space to be in months or years ago. To take my hat off to people like Darcy or yourself who've been working it. I think people are going to want to be needing and want to be part of things going forward. Do we know what that looks like? No, but I think it's our time to step up, and it's our opportunity as well.
Totally. Well, I know we've got a couple minutes before Instagram officially ends us. So before we get to that point, what is one thing that folks in the Sullivan community can do to support or get plugged into the efforts that you have going on at CRED?
Well, so we have a twice a day live webinar, which we gift into our community. It's jump on our website, cred.global/cred15. That'll get you connected into the community. Join our webinars. They're live. We post them on YouTube as well afterwards. And in the coming weeks and months ahead, we're going to be launching some exciting 30-day social impact challenges in partnership with Sullivan. So love for people to be part of that and stay connected.
Awesome. Yeah. And for folks, there's an app, right, as well that people can go and check out. And so if you want to track behaviors and how they build up over this time, I mean, Darcy and I were talking about that, right? Like, how can we be when we look back, how do we have things that we can actually tangibly touch and see? And so you have the solution, I suppose.
I was listening to that going, yeah, the new version of the app coming in 2 weeks where people can track their mood and also track their impact as well.
I literally did not plant that intentionally for you, but now that I look at it, it's like, oh, that was a really convenient segue. So. Awesome.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you.
Totally. Well, thanks for joining, man. Thanks for waking up early. I'm glad we got the technology working, and I'm sure we will find ways to collaborate moving forward. So
that sounds great, Bud. Thank you.
Awesome. See you, Chalky.
Bye.
All right. So we were able to make our connection, our first Cross Waters Australia conversation and webinar here. So thanks to Chalky and Darcy for joining. If you've got questions for them, definitely follow up. You can find them online. This video will be posted on YouTube as well, so you can go back and kind of dig through the talk that we had. So we will be back at this next week, Wednesday and Friday. So be sure to join us here on Instagram, and we will see you then. Have a good weekend, friends. Ciao.